Captain Picard practices his fencing fun. The Blue Parrot Cafe serves some blue concoctions. And Deanna Troi knows all about the Zanza Men's Dance Palace. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 23, We'll Always Have Paris, written by Deborah Dean Davis and Hannah Louise Shear, directed by Robert Becker. This was April 30th, 1988. Where were you? By the way, special thanks to Grandpa One, aka Tim Baum, for sponsoring this entire season. We have a very special guest today. Can you believe it? One of the writers of the episode, Deborah Dean Davis. Hello, how are you today?
Hello, nice to see you. I'm great.
Beautiful.
To answer your question, I'm just great. I'm not in Paris, but I'm great.
You're enjoying a beautiful day in LA, though.
Yes. Roses.
You'll always have Paris.
Well, let's just jump into this. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. This is wonderful to have you. This is your only Star Trek credit, writing credit. Can you please tell us how this came about?
DC Fontana invited me before the show even got started, and she asked me to come in and go into the new set, the new ship. She wanted to know, did it make you feel like you're on the Enterprise, And I was at Paramount a lot because I had started my feature career. I was writing a lot of feature films. But I was so honored for her to ask me to do that I, of course, went over there. And I went into the ship, and I swear to God, those doors went, and I thought, we were in the, I felt like it so much. I was like, really, I went crazy, and they all got so excited. So that was, I thought, going to be my only thing with Star Trek. And I was happy about even being involved like that. But then Roddenberry asked for my ideas. And I actually had, and I think as a writer, a lifetime writer like myself, being able to sit down with him and discuss my ideas was, a moment, a seminal moment in my life, So he liked some of my, but I was writing for Meg Ryan. I was writing movies.
Wow.
So then one of those ideas was We'll Always Have Paris. And he really wanted to do that. So Hannah called me and she said, I have the flu. I don't feel well. This is your, Mama, is there some reason? And I said, no, I'd be honored to have a Star Trek credit, And so I'm a fast writer. Don't tell anyone. So I said yes, and I was doing what I was doing with the features anyway, and I was at Paramount anyway, and I just said, I'm going to do this because why would anybody say no to that, So that's how it happened, and that's why, and it's my last television credit, I believe, because no, wait, they asked me, I wrote so many Night Riders, the first season, 5 of the first 12, and this is such a weird thing for show business. When that show went off the air, they called me and said, will you write the last one? And we want you to write it. And I did that one. So it was my last television thing. And what a great way to go out.
And everybody at home, sorry, Cirroc, I know you're going to say something. Just real quick to let you know what Deborah has done in the 80s. It's pretty much like every show that you heard of in the 80s. The Incredible Hulk, Fantasy Island, The Fall Guy, Knight Rider, Magnum PI, and so on. So many cool things. It's like a who's what of TV. Sorry, but you were saying, Cirroc?
No, Deborah, I really like this episode because it kind of establishes something that we get to know Picard for throughout his career, and that is his fragility with women and his relationship situations. And my question is, what conversation did you have with Gene about developing that backstory or creating that identity for you?
That's a great question. And, by the way, I mean, you guys are doing this show, so the Prime Directive? Really? Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, how are you supposed to write anything with that Prime Directive? So I think that's why I went into this, went to a place that I go to often in my writing, which is love. Picard, what a great protagonist, but we didn't see that side. So I thought, this has got to happen. And, did the homage to Casablanca, basically, because they can't be together. And there's got to be a good reason for that, because he's too fabulous for words, right? So that's where I came up with that, and I thought, that's not messing with the Prime Directive. It's the only way I could think to to actually elevate the show, which I like to do, and not mess up Mr. Roddenberry's vision, his vision and his version of how the world should be. So that was it. It was about love. And actually the Magnum I did was too, and that was harder to do because he's the sexiest guy on TV and they wouldn't let him fall in love.
Tom Selleck?
So,
yep.
Yeah, I was the only one that I gave him, he got hit his head and he didn't know who he was.
Perfect.
So that's how, and it was a very different Star Trek thing too, as there's not many like that.
Well, did you pull from something in your life? Did you have, a missed connection, or your reaction says probably maybe more than once even, but what did you pull from?
I've been married and divorced 4 times. So, and in between those, there have been others. I love love, but I'm also an extremely independent woman. So, do I relate to Picard? Yes. And the word soulmate, I don't remember the first time I heard the word soulmate, but I thought, wow, that's true. And there are people that you meet in your life, and you don't have to even have a long relationship with them or be married to them or, even have sex with them or anything like that, but they stick with you. And there are things that make you remember them. And it's always fondly. It's always an uplifting feeling, because that's what love is, and you don't say no to that. If you want to get the most out of your life, you don't say no to that. Even if they're dead and you just want to spend the day thinking about them. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a question about the Janice character, Janice Mannheim character, the main love interest in this. And
I forgot the last name. I haven't watched it for a very long time. Mannheim, I love that name.
There was a sense that I got from the way this character was portrayed that this type of woman that she was playing was kind of, I would say, subservient and willing to sacrifice herself for her husband in this case. Um, a sacrifice that Picard thought would make him ordinary, as you put it. This kind of woman is more of a stereotype of the kind of woman that men fantasize about having, per se, at least in that time period, and not as independent and vocal as somebody like yourself. And
Well,
so
she
my
wasn't me. She's not.
right,
I wasn't writing her from my perspective. I was writing him from my perspective, and
Hmm.
and she did that for a good cause. So that's more of a Joan of Arc, actually. It wasn't for him. Wasn't that clear? I don't remember. That should have been.
no, it was clear. It was clear, but
Yeah.
when you frame it in a way that you say that you were writing Picard from your perspective, that lets me know that that's like as you were describing the kind of point of view that you have, and so
Yeah.
that's the kind of interesting dynamic that I think seeing that perspective coming from a woman who is independent and who believes in love, but also has this kind of perspective that Picard has. I think that's an interesting dynamic to have in the back of your mind as I'm watching this episode.
Emily Bronte was a woman, and she wrote Heathcliff.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, Heathcliff was her character in Wuthering Heights. Back then, they had to change their names to men's names to get published. Now, I think it's time that people understand that a writer, no matter what their genitalia is empathetic to everyone. That's why we can write serial killers. We're not serial killers. We can write children. I haven't been a child for a very long time, but I keep a child within me, So yeah, she was dedicated to the cause. I'm dedicated to the Writers Guild cause, the strike, because I've been a writer my life. But I'm not like I don't have her level of Joan of Arc. That's she wanted to be with Picard.
Yeah, she did, and she was upset about that lie to me scene. Kind of, I really enjoyed that exchange between them.
What was
and
the
way
one?
it was written.
You remind me of it.
Well, she says, "Well, why didn't you show up to the cafe?"
The cafe.
And he says, "I was afraid." And she's like, "Oh no, please don't do that. I was hoping you would lie,
Yeah.
And that's when he came up with, I was dazed and confused. I went to the wrong cafe. I got the days mixed up, and I went to the wrong place. And then she said, "Oh yes, and it was raining. You couldn't find a cab." Mm-hmm. And
he shakes his head.
Yes, and I really love that dialogue, just because once again, based on the empathy thing, she was saying essentially, be nice to me in this moment, and don't make it about you. Yeah.
Give me a story I can wrap my heart around and live with.
Yeah.
And this is this. I mean, everybody. It doesn't matter. Everybody has experienced love and love lost, and it's just such a human thing. It's almost like necessary. Like it gives you your joints away so that they don't hurt anymore. It gets things going in you. And I think that's why when that was it was the one that I wanted to write.
Well, Deborah, you mentioned the writer's strike. Wasn't there a writer's strike going on right around that time?
Absolutely. This has been my third or fourth strike.
And did that affect this at all? I don't know the exact timeline of it, but I think it was around that time.
Where's Hannah when we need her? She's the person who I don't even know what day it is. Sometimes I call Hannah and say, what day is it? And she says, oh, yeah, Sunday happened 2 days ago. That's okay. So you said 1988, and I went, wow. I was at the strike at Paramount. They invited us because of Star Trek. And they said, any of the writers, please come. And Hannah couldn't come. And so I went. And that guy, Brent
Spiner?
Yeah. The guy that played Data, he was walking with me, and somebody was standing next to me. It was a wide sidewalk, and I didn't know the person, and they were talking a lot, but not engaging. And I turned to Brett, and I said, what is he saying? And he said, he's reciting We'll Always Have Paris. He's reciting your script.
Wow.
And I was like blown away. I mean, he was a fan, and he had memorized We'll Always Have Paris. And I was, I said, you may have to hold me up for a minute. Like, wow, that's amazing. And he goes, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Sounds like Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
They like to memorize things.
They memorize it. And I didn't recognize the scene, you just were talking about the Writers Guild. That was one of the weirdest moments I've had on a line.
Wow.
Yeah, you had some very good lines. I mentioned earlier where you said life would have somehow made you ordinary. And Picard's response was, am I that transparent? Which I thought was just really great writing. There's another thing that you touched on in this episode conceptually. And it is something that, as most themes in Star Trek, end up becoming part of reality. And this is the idea of this professor, in this case, dedicating his life to opening some dimension of some sort. Finding the power of this, these gravitational pull of planets and stars, and using that energy to essentially open a dimension. And then he found himself trapped in between this dimension and another dimension, which he could not articulate what it was like. I thought that was another great thing, because sometimes things are beyond words. But that's a concept that now has been used, because this was in '88. That same kind of concept has been used in movies like Contact with Jodie Foster. Just a bunch of movies. And it's actually been realized to some extent, at least in a conspiracy type of way, with a particle collider that was invented in Switzerland, where people are concerned about this same kind of rip in interdimensional time and space. And so this concept has actually materialized in a real form of a conversation in the public. How do you feel about that?
I think it's amazing. I think that sometimes we write things that happen, and sometimes we understand things not in an Einstein way, where we can do an actual, what do they call them, theorem, or and prove it that way. But again, I'm going to go to the empathy part. That is never ending. That is not definable. So when you go there as a writer, these are things that happen, that come to you, and they don't come to you. That makes it sound like you're just writing, and then what if this happened? And maybe it looks stupid, but there's ways of making it better. Because all you have to do is research, the theory of motion, all these different things, and just start looking at actual math. But if that happened, then that could happen. It's possible. Mm-hmm. And Star Trek thing wasn't a physics class, so we didn't have to
prove your theories.
Yeah, you could just go. And I think that, when I see the thing about like the Switzerland, the particle thing, I love that stuff. I just think it's interesting, and I don't understand it. But yeah, that's how many, not Einstein, who's the one that did the theory of motion? Kills me. It's like the number one thing, the two thing, three thing, four thing. It's Newton's theory of motion. I mean, he's got not just one theory, but like a lot of them, and they're being used today with little tiny satellites riveting off of asteroids to see what they could do to maybe change the direction of an asteroid. That's really happening now. I think it's interesting. It's not a hobby.
Yeah.
I think burying your bananas in your flower bed and having that be enough to feed all the flowers, I think that's fucking fascinating. So, it's hard not to get me excited. So, we just went there because
Deborah,
he had to be so great, that guy, Mannheim.
There were a couple more firsts that I noticed as well. And you keep mentioning Mannheim, great name. I did wonder if you got that name from somebody, because I know sometimes writers will be like, oh, it's my ex. Oh, we need a villain's name. I'll use my ex-wife's last name or something like that. But did you pull that from anything?
I only did that once, and I did it on a toe tag of a dead body.
Oh, wow.
I don't remember what show it was, but it was somebody I didn't like. But no, Mannheim, I think it was the word man, and I think Heim, I can't remember what that means in German. I think it was, like a great man.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was, we gave him a name of why she's going to stay with him. Okay. Because, I would have stayed with Picard.
Well, what I wanted to ask you, especially...
And then I would have divorced him because of his prime directive.
Right.
But you had... there were a couple more firsts I noticed in this episode when watching it.
Oh.
One was that this felt like the first episode that used data properly. He has these special powers in that, hey, if there's no oxygen, no problem. Hey, if there's lasers, he's got the best chance. You actually use this felt like the first episode in which data was used, properly. And then in many subsequent episodes after this, episodes do it all the time. Yeah. And then in other series as well.
You just explained why he walked with me. I didn't know why he was walking with me.
Maybe.
I didn't realize that they weren't utilizing him before. I mean, I think that he's a great character.
Not in that way, yeah.
Not in that individual way where his unique set of skills would be perfectly fitted for the assignment, which is what this case was.
Yep, he's a Swiss Army knife. And then the other first was...
He had a Swiss Army knife?
No.
Did he really? That would be my dad.
He is one, figuratively speaking. He can do anything.
I see what you're saying. He can do anything.
But the other first was, this was the first time that I felt that I saw Patrick Stewart being comfortable with the dialogue and comfortable in the role. I mean, he still plays a captain of a spaceship, a starship out 400 years in the future, beautifully and great and all that. But when he was in that cafe in Paris, there was something about him that was much more comfortable. And when he was talking to the lady, he seemed so much more relaxed. And it was like, boom, right there. He's comfortable. He gets the dialogue better than he got the previous 23 episodes of dialogue. And I wonder if it was just because it was a little bit more real, or if it was a little bit more Shakespearean, which is more in his wheelhouse. But whatever it was, you wrote a script and a dialogue that I felt like he was just sliding into like an old comfortable pair of slippers. Perfect for him.
That's wonderful. That's such a nice compliment. Thank you. Thank you. It's, Shakespeare is really ridiculously emotional, and so are we as human beings. And I think that's why I put all my characters in everything I ever write and do. I put them through hell because for that reason. Because all of us, every person I ever meet, people have a hard time. People have, they miss people. They're, people have problems, and that's our audience. And so you want to give them a hero, but you want that hero to have a piece of them in him, so that they can almost feel like him. That they can say, well, he's strong. He's going to go on, even though this happened. And my dad was like 75, and when he wanted to move a piano out of the house, and he said, I got to get someone to help me. My mom said, are you going to lay down and die or move the piano? And he was 75, and he figured it out. He figured it out, and he got the piano moved. That's the family I come from. So, there's a lot of people who lay down and die, and, you don't have to. Bad things happen to all of us, and it hurts, and you move on. And sometimes you move on to do something better or more important. And in this show, that was always the feeling in Star Trek that I always got, was that they, no matter what was happening, they were doing something for good, making things better. And it's great that it's such a popular show, because we all need to remember that. We need to remember, yeah, it may be hard, but I'm going to do this, the right thing, the good thing. And I love that you said he was so comfortable. I never met him. I walked through a hall, and we passed in a hall, and I can't remember where this hallway was, somewhere probably at a studio.
Who is this?
Picard.
Patrick Stewart.
What's his real name?
Patrick Stewart.
Yes. Yeah. And I've never met him. And he nodded, and I said hello, and have a good day. He said, have a good day. I mean, it was that was it. I didn't say, we'll always have Paris. Because it was kind of perfect.
He would have loved that, actually, to know
I know,
that.
But
I want to give you a compliment also on another aspect of this story that I really enjoyed. I love when writers use kind of a double entendre in their writing, and in my opinion, the idea of the deja vu like time lapses correlated very well with the deja vu occurrence of this meeting in Paris, kind of reliving that again and putting closure to it. I thought that's a great way to take your plots and your A and B storylines and cross them over with similar themes. So I just think this episode was fantastically written. And I just want to compliment you on how the pace and the flow was. It was so enjoyable to watch.
Hannah had a fever. She had She had
Wow.
a fever. I'm thinking that probably had something to do with it being so good. And she knew knows that show so well. The holodeck. Yeah. I just hope it wasn't like a flashback in a prom dress. I just wanted it to be the metaphor for relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you said Meg Ryan, it just put a lot of things in perspective for me. When I replay the episode in my head, I think of a romantic kind of Harry Met Sally type of
yeah, exactly.
feel to this episode. Yeah.
We worked together on 2 things, and she's a great person, and she's like the opposite of me. She's great at math. I mean, you wouldn't think. You'd think, oh, she's Meg Ryan, and no, I was like Meg Ryan, and she was, really, really, she's so smart. Yeah. I think Michelle did a great job on the thing. I was really happy with what she did.
Well, Deborah, this has been so cool. We're just about out of time here, but we really appreciate you giving us your insights and being so fun with it. Before we hit record, everybody at home, she was having us in stitches already. So she is tons of fun, and we appreciate you taking us on a walk down memory lane as well with the writer's strike from back then and how things were back in '88. But we really appreciate you taking the time. We appreciate you writing this episode and everything that you do. Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you both so much for having me.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Pleasure.
Everybody at home. There you go. You got it. Perfect. Boy Scout.
He does it
Isn't that the
perfect.
Boy Scout thing? Everybody at home, stick around. We will be right back on the 7th rule.